right, but they as soon as it expires, they buy it again and
Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
monopolize it so no one can use it.
Order belongs to the U.S. government. And I think you'll see the courts rule that before the March implementation. It was wrong. Couldn't be carried out if the state wanted to. There's just no plans for it. There's no place to place individuals. There's no way to distinguish who's documented, who's undocumented. So it's largely just, unfortunately, extreme politics. And I've spoken against it as a senator. It's wrong. We ought to leave immigration to the federal government.
But have you spoken in terms of, what's HPD going to do?
HPD is not enforcing immigration laws, period. It's unconstitutional. The border belongs to the U.S. government. And I think you'll see the courts rule that before the March implementation. It was wrong. Couldn't be carried out if the state wanted to. There's just no plans for it. There's no place to place individuals. There's no way to distinguish who's documented, who's undocumented. So it's largely just, unfortunately, extreme politics. And I've spoken against it as a senator. It's wrong. We ought to leave immigration to the federal government.
So Mayor Whitmire answers media questions according to SB4. I empathize with the anxiety many feel regarding this bill, but Houston will not enforce such unconstitutional orders. I am confident the court system will strike down this bill. So does the question I have, does Mayor Whitmire have the authority to do that? To decide to not enforce something? Isn't the SB4 a state deal?
This is one of the ones where everybody is standing around pissing on constitutional issues. Right now, we've got a bunch of people in the state of Texas that feel like this is the U.S. government's responsibility. However, they have not stepped up and become responsible. Therefore, in the lack of the federal government protecting us, it is the right of the state to protect itself.
Yeah, so the law related to this is getting all fuzzy. Related to who is following the law and not, like, you know what I mean?
I'm okay. Here's where I've got to ask this. In the county or city laws, is there a provision that requires you to be a legal resident of the U.S.?
No.
If there is, they should be enforcing it. If there is not, then they cannot be forced to enforce it. Because a law has to be made. It can't be just if they don't have papers, pick them up. Because that's getting dangerously close to some fucked up shit. And, legal people that don't have their ID on them but can't speak English. There's a whole lot of, whoa, slow down, dude, going on here.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is border enforcement and immigration is not a city issue or a county issue. It's a federal issue.
Right.
Let them handle it. We're not going to.
Right. And I think that's the legal stance for that. Let's hopefully
I'm not of the biggest agreement of the decision. However, I have to support it in, me, I'm the I'm more of the constitutional kind of guy, and that argument leads directly to constitutional divide of power.
Yeah.
We have ICE, we have NSA to handle
Mhm.
that.
Homeland
Local law.
Security.
Now, do if they were to come here and say HPD, we need your help, then they would be obliged to help them under their national authority.
Let's
But
read some.
immigration and that it is not the authority of the local police or even the state.
Let's let's read some of this article. Maybe it'll clear it up. The Houston Chronicle story by Jasper Shearer 3 days ago. 4 things to know about SB4 Texas migrant arrest law. It says Governor Greg Abbott's feud with Biden's administration over the southern border is reaching new heights as Texas attempts to expand its role in immigration enforcement like never before. Though the area is federally responsibility, though the area is a federal responsibility, Republican lawmakers have approved some $11 billion for Abbott's border crackdown known as Operation Lone Star, in which thousands of state police and National Guard members have been deployed to the border to arrest migrants for trespassing on private land and other state charges. It says last year the Texas legislation went a
Uh,
step further. Yeah,
that
that just kind of made
that
me think too.
no
The
no
private
that
land, that makes sense. The part where they said trespassing on private land, that kind of makes sense right there.
this is why we say
Using
look
that,
that shit up, read it from different sources.
yeah, using that kind of makes sense. Um,
No, you know me. I support the guys that live on the border. I've seen a rape tree. I know I shouldn't say it that way, but I've seen the trees where they hang the panties and stuff like that. No, man, something has to be done.
Let me read some more. It says last year, the Texas legislation went a step further, passing a new law that empowers state officials to essentially deport people who are suspected of crossing the border illegally, with the measure set to take effect in the coming weeks. Here's what you need to know about it. See, I'd have a problem with, you know, who are suspected of crossing the border illegally. That phrase. So, what is SB4? The law known as Senate Bill 4 creates a new class of illegal entry state crimes that authorize police to arrest people they suspect of unlawfully entering Texas from Mexico between ports of entry. The offense is punishable by up to 6 months in jail, though a judge could order a defendant to return to Mexico in lieu of continuing with the case as long as the defendant consents. And there goes another little problem too, because the communication issues related to language barriers and confusing people, and like they have to consent, but then they probably don't even know that they have to consent. They're not going to tell them
Okay,
that.
here's the options they're going to be given. They're not going to be explained in depth. They're going to say, "Well, you can go to court and maybe end up in jail, or we can take you back." So, do you want to go to jail or do you want to go back?
Want to
That
go to jail?
that
Want to go home? You
you
want to go to
you've
jail?
talked
Want to go?
you've talked to cops before. That's exactly the information they're going to give you. They gave you all the relevant information in the first sentence, and then they get you, and then they stop and then go. So, do you want to go to jail because they're that is what they're trying to give you the option. You want to go to jail? Or you want to go home?
Mm-hmm.
Say, I would take the green bus. Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like a Training Day, the corrupt cop from that movie.
Okay, you got to understand. I also come from the day where I've seen a green bus wedding. The green bus wedding, it's done normally from the El Paso area and stuff like that. Um, they all get dressed up and everything, and then they go to someone's place, and then they call immigration. Immigration comes, they put them all on a bus, they all go, yeah, we'll just go home. They take them back. They drop them off across the border. They get picked up by friends. They go. They do a wedding and all that stuff. And within 2-3 weeks, they're all back across the border, living in their houses, working their jobs again. I've seen that happen with my eyes before. I thought it was hilarious. I didn't have a problem with it, but a lot of with me being more of a right individual, when I tell that story, I've noticed that right wingers tend to get really upset about that. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. That's as ingenious to me as a tax loophole. I give them props for it. They're taking advantage of a law to get free transportation down to Mexico, and then they find their own way. That's fucking hey, fuck, man. Hey, can I call a green bus? I want to go to Mexico for a couple of weeks. I mean, I can't just call an immigration bus and go. Hell.
Yeah.
They figured out a way. Like I said. Oh man, I'm stomping all over my right-wing hardness, aren't I?
Yeah, you're gonna.
People are going to start questioning me now. I'm sorry, people. I'm actually a real human being. I'm not as hard ass as people seem to think I am, but at the same time, I'm even worse than people think I am.
Yeah. Let's read some more. It says, for convicted offenders, though, it's not much of a choice. The law requires judges to issue return orders for those convicted of illegal entry, for which refusal to comply would trigger a penalty of up to 20 years in prison. The provision effectively puts deportation powers, long held solely by the federal government, in the state's hands. When does it take effect? Abbott signed SB 4 into law in December, and it's set to take effect March 5th. The Biden administration has sued in an attempt to block it, arguing that immigration enforcement falls solely under the purview of the federal government. Texas officials had until Wednesday to respond to the Justice Department's initial court filing. A federal judge overseeing the case has scheduled a February 5th hearing. Austin considered the Biden administration request to block the law.
Okay, so what they're saying is, if you'll notice the paragraph above that one, which is the one I was trying to comment on, they're saying falls solely under the purview of the federal government unless it is by their consent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go to jail or do you want to go home?
Yeah.
That's the loophole, and that's in there. Say they're not going to ship off. They're not going to break the Constitution. They're not going to send anyone home that doesn't want to go. They're only going to take people that want to go home back.
But they're going to confuse the hell out of them, and they ain't going to know.
And they're going to scare. Yes. Like I say, I love good cops. I hate fucking bad cops. And that's what we need to work on is all cops are not bad. 60%, 70%, maybe even a little more are absolutely okay. But then you've got the power trippy, crazy ones. I hate almost every detective that I've had to deal with from they think I'm a bad guy or they're investigating and I'm part of it kind of situation, because they're bullies, they're crap. The problem we have with the law right now, the Miranda rights, it simply says anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law, meaning anything you say to a police officer, they can use against you. However, anything that they say that cannot be used against you is considered hearsay and will be shut down in court. So if they say, well, he had this definite alibi, well, that he said that he was here and here. Well, that's hearsay because it's not proven. It's not that. But he said he knew the person. Okay, well, he knew the person, therefore he is in connection with them. But it's just it's horrible the way the law is made to where they can't also say positive things or right things. It's like if you that you tell them, because that becomes hearsay.
Let's read some more. It says, why is DOJ fighting SB4? In their suit, Department of Justice officials allege that the state's efforts intrude on the federal government's exclusive authority to regulate the entry and removal of non-citizens, frustrate the United States immigration operations and proceedings, and interfere with U.S. foreign relations. Critics have long said that the law appears to run afoul of key 2012 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that restricts states from enforcing immigration laws. The lawsuit could trigger the Supreme Court to revisit that opinion, known as Arizona versus United States. The Biden administration cited the case near the top of its filing, noting the High Court found that the U.S. government has broad, undoubted power over the subject of immigration and the status of non-citizens. It says Republican lawmakers have rejected charges that SB4 clashes with the federal immigration law, arguing it deliberately tracks the language of existing statutes while exempting people who've been granted asylum and other forms of legal status. But the Department of Justice says it would still allow Texas to bring criminal charges against immigrants that could stymie federal policies. So this is really tricky, like going on here, because they don't have a chance to be granted asylum when they've already decided that they've entered illegally. So then that supersedes that and doesn't allow that process to happen. Something else they said earlier up here.
Ooh, I know what that does. Okay, so if you cross the border and into private property, you can be sent back.
Right.
If you cross the border into federal or protected land, not state, then you still are qualified for all the privileges.
Yeah, but it won't matter because if they decide that you have been illegally, if they
when they say illegally, when you're saying that, that means you have crossed into, like I said, it protects private property owners. So if you go through like the little park thing that they're talking about that has been on the news recently, you're okay. But if you go through Old McDonald's farm, then you can be arrested, and since you've already committed a crime, you're not qualified for immunity or asylum. If you cross over on private property, you have already committed a crime, therefore do not qualify for asylum. I'm just trying to understand. I'm trying to understand the argument. I'm not supporting it or any. I'm not saying one way or another. I'm trying to word it and say it out loud. Because that's what like they're saying. The local police here in Houston, they're here already. It's not their responsibility to deport them. And at this point in time, the question is, can local police hold a non-citizen at all?
Yeah. So this is really tricky because it's a state law. So that's why the city of Houston would have implications on how they would
we don't have a border. So we can't determine how they entered. That's fine on us. But like I said, if they go through the many miles of federal land, Indian land, stuff like that on the border, then they can still claim asylum.
Yeah. So,
If they
but the
cross the border onto a privately owned property, then they have committed the crime of trespassing. Since they
yeah.
are
So
trespassing, they do not have the ability to claim asylum because they are already in violation of law. They have not
yes,
crossed in a legal manner,
yeah.
which
So, but what
is
the
good.
problem with all of that is that if you didn't witness them doing it, then you don't know that. So, but this law allows you
Which is why
to,
Houston can't.
but any of them, anywhere in its state. So, but if
No,
you,
if you're crossing over Old McDonald's farm and any of all of this federal guard, all this stuff they've got down here, they catch you on Old McDonald's farm, then you either go to court or you're out.
yeah, but what I'm saying is it's a state law, and it's saying that if someone is suspected to be have entered illegally. So if you haven't seen them,
Well,
cross,
no. The law doesn't necessarily say that because we have not read the law.
well,
The article says that it says that.
that's what it's been saying since beginning because I already was looking at this. All they need is the suspected because that's what caught my eye up my problem
But
with it.
again,
So that means if you could just look at someone
what
and
qualifies for that? Blah 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 blah. See,
you could just look at someone and you're suspecting that they crossed illegally, then that kicks in this process.
too much assumption there. I need to see the law at this point. If you're going to argue from that position that anyone that just looks like they're not American is that, then yeah, no, I don't think the law says that.
Let's
I
read
think
some
it's
more.
been interpreted that way, and that's the way they're getting you to read it to piss you off.
Let's read some more. It says, "What does SB4 mean for immigration in Texas?" Did I read this? It says Abbott has said the measure would stop the tidal wave of illegal entry into Texas. He has blamed the Biden administration for spiking migrant crossings and argued that Texas is being forced to step up on its own. State Representative David Spiller, the Jacksboro Republican who carried the measure through the Texas House, has called it a humane, logical, and efficient approach to the border crisis. There's nothing unfair about ordering someone back from where they came if they arrived here illegally, Spiller said. Democrats and immigrants advocates contend that it would lead to racial profiling and sow distrust between law enforcement and people of color. They also say that paired with a new anti-smuggling law that took effect Tuesday, it will punish people for driving undocumented family members on routine trips. State Senator Brian Birdwell, Granbury Republican who chairs the Senate Board of Security Committee, was one of the lone GOP members to speak out last year against the measure. It's an extraordinary rebuke, Birdwell argued. The SB4 would usurp the federal government's power to enforce immigration laws. We're setting a terrible precedent for the future by invalidating our obedience and faithfulness to our Constitution, Birdwell said. President Biden's failure to obey his oath does not compel us to violate ours. Instead, it compels our federal representatives to constrain him and for the electorate to remove him in the coming year. There was a clip. Is this it? Hold on. There was a clip. Maybe if I refresh. Where did it go? There was a video clip. Where did it go?
Slide downwards.
I don't see it.
No, slide downward and stop. Continue reading. Click
Yeah, I already did that. I refreshed the page. Okay,
and then
wait.
go down, and there you go.
This is it, yeah.
to Mexico.
Measure comes as Governor.
The Senate unveiled a border bill that could send migrants back to Mexico.
Measure comes as Governor Abbott says he will continue his border security push that has put him at odds with the federal government. Shannon here to explain what's in the bill and also reaction. Shannon.
Well, Lauren, the bill just dropped last night, and it is a bipartisan effort, but it's expected to face some resistance from House Republicans. As senators will vote on this $118 billion package as early as Wednesday. It would allow the president to shut down the border and send migrants back to Mexico if average daily crossings exceed 5,000. It also includes money to hire hundreds of new border agents and provides funds for cities that are inundated now with asylum seekers. Before the bill was released, Governor Greg Abbott joined several other Republican governors in Eagle Pass. Abbott says the Texas National Guard will continue to expand security efforts.
We are banding together to fight to ensure that we will be able to maintain our constitutional guarantee that states will be able to defend against any type of imminent danger or an invasion.
Every state in the country is depending on Joe Biden acting. And if he does not, then we will continue to do so. And we stand with Governor Abbott in what he is doing.
Conservatives believe the president needs to act now and should not wait on Congress. But the Senate's border bill is also facing criticism from the left. Progressives arguing the plan goes too far. Now, this bill will need the support from both sides. 60 votes are necessary to avoid a filibuster and to push the measure forward. In the control room, Shannon Murray for Good Day.
Yeah, man. My conclusion is this is a complicated mess.
Okay, something that they are reporting wrong, and this is something that I've been looking into this one because, like I said, I've got friends with farms literally on the border. It does not limit the number of people to 5,000. It is if the number of people, okay, it allows the average number of people come in every day. If that number goes beyond 5,000 in a week, then instead of stop and process, it becomes stop and export. So it's not a limitation to 5,000. It is a limit to going 5,000 above normal or average numbers. That's something they're not being clear about in this, which makes a huge difference between them only allowing 5,000 and then saying, you know, we've had 8,000 people on average every day for the last 2 weeks, and now we got 13,000, 14,000. Now we're done. We stop there. Anyone more? It limits the cap. It is not the cap, if you understand that statement.
Look, I found this clip right here. It says the removal bill would empower police to arrest people they suspect of unlawfully entering Texas from Mexico, creating a new class of illegal entry state crimes. Judges would decide whether to issue an order to return to Mexico in lieu of prosecution with consent from migrants. So the language is similar to what it was saying earlier. And this is what I was saying, this part of police to arrest people.
I want to know what defines as suspected of.
That's a problem.
Exactly. I'm agreeing with you that that's a problem. Because, hey, I ain't blind to the fact that the cops are bitches. I mean, yeah. I grew up in small towns and dark communities. I don't like most cops.
So that
no offense to the ones I do, and like I say, I still support probably 75% of you guys.
That language is a problem. You know, that leaves too much margin for abuse.
You know, for all these lawyers being so overly detailed to making something like the the help of the American people during the pandemic go from a 6-page document which clearly defines what they're going to give the people, where the money's going to come from, and that's it, into a 3,000-page document that included taxes for airlines, for CO2 emissions, and qualifications on that, and extensions of the pandemic money to people that literally would never have to worry about it in the first place. I mean, come on. Why is that language so vague when you were so specific with all of that?
Yeah, I think it shows, some what's the
Eagerness
word?
to abuse.
Yeah, it's given an opportunity, like it's for a reason. So this is the one. I thought I was sharing this, but I wasn't. So this is what I was looking at right here. It says Texas legislation passes border bill that would empower state to begin deportations. It's a different article. It's still on Houston Chronicle, and it's by the same author, Jasper Scherer. It says updated November 15th, 2023. Wow. So this is kind of old as far as. Anyways, let's read this right quick. It says Republican state lawmakers signed off on a sweeping measure Tuesday night that will allow the state to remove people from the country who are suspected of crossing the border illegally, a major escalation of Texas border crackdown that will test the
Hey,
legal boundaries.
you're the one emphasizing that word. It was not emphasized in the article.
Yes, I'm definitely emphasizing it. That will test the legal boundaries of state immigration enforcement powers. The proposal now heads to the desk of Governor Greg Abbott, who has asked lawmakers to pass the measure as part of a special legislative session he called last week. The bill passed on an 83-61 party line vote following several hours of debate that saw Republicans turn down 24 Democratic attempts to amend the bill. So this is before the article that we read earlier, because it's already been signed now, and it's going to go into effect on March 5th or whatever. Some more. Abbott also pushing for a 1.54 billion spending bill that would pump more money into the state's historic effort to build a wall along its southern border. That proposal cleared the House on Tuesday night with a small tweak that forces it back to the Senate, which can either accept the House change or have lawmakers from both chambers hash out the difference in the conference committee. The removal bill would empower police to arrest people they suspect of unlawfully entering Texas from Mexico, creating a new class of illegal entry state crimes. Judges would decide whether to issue an order to return to Mexico in lieu of persecution with consent from migrants. Let me read the rest of it just because it says, but they will also be required to issue return orders for those convicted of illegal entry without any input from the offender. People would face stiff penalties for refusing the orders, effectively leaving them to choose between state-ordered deportation to Mexico or up to 20 years in prison. 20 years. And it's like, one thing that's weird about this to me is that, they don't want they don't want them to come here illegally or whatever, but then they're going to hold them in the prison. That means they're still here in the United States. You know what I'm saying? They're in prison, but they're still
Okay,
here.
a little whataboutism. You do realize that violation of Mexico's border laws is a 4-year prison sentence. And Mexico's not enforcing the law against these people either. So now we're getting into a whole new world of what the hell's going on here, really?
Yeah, this is a mess
That
right
that
here.
that would be CIA cartel and money laundering again.
And I covered in the show last week about the prison labor deal, you know, how they loan out prisoners or whatever. And like people want to say, you know, they're making license plates or whatever, but it's way more complicated than that. And then because I covered a story where they had people working at Burger King, I want to say, and these were prisoners and they were working at Burger King and they were getting paid like pennies or whatever. The prison is making all kinds
Okay,
of money off of it.
I want receipts on that, please.
I covered it. I did a clip. You can watch the video. It's called Prison Labor. I made it last week or earlier this week.
Okay, cool. Because I've seen a lot of weird and crazy stuff and shit like that, but not gone to weirdness like that. But then again, they made it basically unconstitutional for them to work roads or anything like that, even if they volunteered to. I know they've been doing telemarketing and stuff like that since the late 80s.
$20 is pretty damn stiff. Let's read some
Well,
more.
they came to America and they got free housing, food, and all that for 20 years. I mean, they got what they came for, right?
I guess so. But on the taxpayer's dime.
Again, a little dark ass humor involved in that. Well, I mean, according to the people that want them to come in and all that, it's going to be the taxpayer's dime anyway.
Yeah. Let me read some more of this. State Representative David Spiller, the Jacksboro Republican who is carrying the measure known as Senate Bill 4 in the House, called it a landmark bill that allows Texans to protect Texas. It's a humane, logical, and efficient approach to a problem created and fostered by the Biden administration's failure and refusal to secure our border, Spiller said. There's nothing unfair about ordering someone back from where they came if they arrived here illegally.
Okay, all of the side of this aside, we both like and hate things about this and stuff like that. But the ultimate thing we're looking at is, if you ask why is this happening? It's happening because our administration ignored it or used it as a propaganda and weapon to get elected, and then completely ignored it. No, did not ignore it. Went so far as turning it over to the VP, who then trivialized the issue. And then the media turned around and every incident at the border became this is how they're all being treated situation, which turned around into a public outrage, which got out of the hands of the Democratic Party, who thought they had control of the narrative and are now realizing, oh shit.
Yeah, man.
That's hot shit right there, man.
So what we gonna do? We gonna dub that?
Yeah, man, let's do it, dog. Let's get it
Your
done.
buttons and they get you emotionally charged. Meanwhile, they slide out the back door with the bag.
We're losing in the polls